A take that has been going around a lot lately is that Part 2 of Chensō Man is slow compared to Part 1. I've seen people on TikTok, Twitter, and Reddit talk about dropping the series because of how slow it has gotten. I believe that there are a few reasons for why people think this way. So let's take a deeper look into the pacing of Part 2 of Chensō Man in comparison to Part 1. Each part of Chensō Man begins with a one-chapter origin in which the protagonist dies and comes back to life. Part 1, Chapter 1 has 55 pages, while Part 2, Chapter 98 has 53 pages. So far, Part 2 is slightly faster paced, even though this means very little in the long run. Moving on to the introductory arcs. For Denji, this is the move to Tokyo plus the Bat Devil arc, where he meets Aki and Power and fights the Bat Devil. For Asa, this is the Yuko friend arc, where she meets Yoshida and Yuko and attempts to fight the Bat Devil. In Part 1, this arc covers chapters 2 through 10, for 9 total. In Part 2, it covers chapters 99 through 102 for 4 total chapters. Once again, Part 2 is faster. This time by a much bigger margin. Each part then has some downtime and world building. In Part 1, Power moves in. There's some tit rubbing.
Nice titties. Mind if I,
And we are introduced to the Gun Devil. In Part 2, Denji and Yoshida go on a date. Asa is introduced to Denji, and Yuko reveals her secret to Asa. In Part 1, this covers chapters 11 to 13 for 3 total chapters. While in Part 2, they covered chapters 103 to 105, also for 3 total. The pacing here is equal. But this is where we diverge. Part 2 is about 5 chapters ahead in terms of story development. Early on in Part 1, Fujimoto kind of wastes a bunch of pages while he's feeling out the plot and style of work. That's why it takes 10 chapters to get through the Bat and Leech Devils. So in the 5 extra chapters we have of Part 2, we have the Yuko fight, chapters 106 to 111, for 6 total chapters. Then there's chapter 112, where Asa invites Denji on a date to the aquarium. This makes it 7 chapters. Now we are at the start of each part's Eternity Devil arc. Part 1 starts at chapter 14, while Part 2 starts at chapter 113, which is 15 chapters into Part 2. Part 2 is 1 chapter behind here, but we basically had an entire extra story arc with Yuko and the Justice Devil. The Eternity arc of Part 1 ends with chapter 19 for a total of 5 chapters. In Part 2, the Eternity arc ends with chapter 117, again for a total of 5 chapters. The pacing here is completely aligned. We then have some more inter-arc chapters. Part 1 has 20 through 22, covering the izakaya and Himeno's creepy behavior towards Denji in 3 chapters. Part 2 has chapters 118 through 121, covering the date at Denji's house, plus the reintroduction to Nayuta, alongside Yoshida's interference with Denji and Asa's relationship, which takes 4 chapters. 23 chapters into Part 2's story, there has been slightly more plot development than Part 1 did in a similar amount of chapters, which was 22. Unsurprisingly, Fujimoto has pretty similar pacing and pretty similar stories. My thoughts on why people think that Part 2 of Chensō Man is far slower than Part 1 is that fans of Chensō Man Part 1 were likely able to binge read the entire series at their own pace, which could have contributed to the perception that it had a faster pace than Part 2. However, now that Part 2 is being released on a near-weekly basis, fans are experiencing the story in a different way, and may feel that it's progressing more slowly as a result. It's important to keep in mind that the pacing of a story is not solely determined by how quickly events unfold, but also by how well the characters are developed, how the themes are explored, and how the world is built. Chensō Man Part 2 is taking its time to establish new characters and dive deeper into existing ones, which is crucial for the overall impact of the story. Ultimately, whether a story feels slow or fast-paced is subjective and can vary from person to person. What's important is to appreciate the journey and trust that Fujimoto has a plan for where the story is heading. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more.